is one of our instructors who can tell you a little bit about herself.
Hello. I'm going to be teaching at the Tampa Elite Animation Academy campus. I've been teaching for 4 years. I teach at the University of South Florida, animation, and at the University of Tampa, I teach animation as well as digital art, which is kind of like Photoshop and graphic design type area. I have a Master of Fine Arts in Animation from Savannah College of Art and Design, and my Bachelor's of Arts is in Electronic Media, which is kind of like graphic design, digital art. It also includes animation, kind of a jack of all trades, very art technical. Okay, so today we're going to be doing Flash, which is a 2D industry standard animation program. What we're going to be doing today is very, very basic bouncing ball tween animation. Bouncing ball is one of the very first exercises that all animators start with. So let's get started. So you guys should have Flash already up on your computer screen. So do your computer screens look like this one right now?
Yes.
Everybody else? Okay, perfect. Okay, so it looks really daunting because it looks like there's a million options. Really, a lot of these have to do with whether we're going to be programming in it or not, and we won't be. So there's really nothing too much to worry about. I'm going to click on Action Script 3, and that's just going to be creating a new document where the programming in it would be Action Script 3, but we're not going to be programming anything, so we don't have to worry about that. So we're just going to hit Action Script 3, 3.0. And so we have this dark gray screen with this white box inside. The white box is what's called our canvas. It's like our piece of paper. On the right-hand side, we have a screen that should say Properties. And underneath where it says Properties is FPS, which is 24. That's our speed. That's what's called our frame rate. Underneath is the size of our document, which is 550 by 400 pixels. Does anybody happen to know how big an HD TV is? The document size of an HD TV, if we were going to make an animation for that, would actually be 1280 by 720. So what we'll do is we're going to change our document size to 1280 by 720 so that you could always play it on an HD TV if you ever wanted to. So under size, where it says 550, I'm just going to tap it, and I'm going to change the number to 1280 and just type it on the keyboard. And it gets wider. It looks like it goes off screen, but we can take these little sliders down here and just move it over. There we go. And we have 720. So it's a bit larger. If we need to pull back so we can see the whole document, you can go over here, which is, it looks like a little magnifying glass. This is called our zoom tool. Right now we're viewing our document at 100%. We can tell because at the top right of this box, it says 100. If we take this zoom tool and we tap it, now inside of the magnifying glass is a little plus sign, which just means when we tap it, we get closer. See up here it says 200% now. We're going to zoom out by hitting on your computer, I believe it's Alt or Control. Your magnifying glass should change into, it should have like a little minus sign inside. And if you tap it, it should pull you out. So now you can see the whole document. So right now I'm at about 50%. So let's take a look at some of the tools Flash has to work with. So first we're going to take a quick look at some of Flash's drawing features, and then we're going to start creating the bouncing ball. So on the left side here, actually on your screen it's on the right side, so let me move mine over so that it matches your screen. Oops. Okay. Your screen looks like this, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure mine matches yours. Okay, so down here we have what's called the brush tool, and it looks like a little paintbrush. And if you click on it, the default color is black. So if you left mouse down and drag, it'll color black. Near the bottom, now we have what looks like a pencil and the color underneath, and a paint bucket and the color underneath. The color of our brush is actually this color. I mean, they're both black. But if we wanted to change the color, you would change it inside of this little paint bucket. When you click on it, you can go in here and choose any color that you want. So now if I go and I color, it's now blue. So I want to change it to red. Now, if you want to change the color of something you've already drawn, so let's say you really like this red, you wish your first line was red, you can take this tool. It's called the selection tool. and just click on it, and it looks a little fuzzier. And that just means that it's selected, and if I change anything, it'll change this. So if I want to change the color, now down here, it says red, but it's still black. If you click on it, and either click on red again or any other color, it'll change. So if we want to, let's say, make it red, we can do it to all of it. Also, if you have the selection tool, and let's say you want to change the color of everything that you've drawn, you can hold down the left mouse button, drag a box. If you drag a box over your drawing, anything that's inside of the box will be selected. And then you can change the color to anything you want. Change this. Now, anything that's not inside the box will not change color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection that does not select everything. It's going to select bits and pieces of all of them. And I'm going to change the color to green. Or I'll make it red so there's more of a difference. Notice that anything that was not within that box did not change color. Another very interesting part of Flash is that I'm going to take this brush. Now down here we can change our brush size. So I'm going to make a larger brush. So now if I left mouse down and drag, I have a much thicker brush. If I take this brush and I'm going to change the color to green, any color that's not a color I've used so far, and I draw over anything that I've already drawn, so I'm touching everything. If I take my selection tool and I grab this and I move it, all of my original drawings, wherever it was overlapped, is erased. A little weird quirk about Flash. And if I take the green brush and I paint anywhere else, anywhere that overlaps is combined. So now these two green shapes are now combined into one. So if it's the same color, it combines. Yes, ma'am?
How did you make your brush thicker?
Oh, all you do is just select the brush tool, and it's near the very bottom. The very, very bottom is the brush shape. So if you want it to be square shaped, or if you want it to look like a calligraphy pen, you can change it here. And right above is the actual size of your brush.
Oh.
So again, this changes the size.
How do you delete what you just did?
Oh, what you can do is, if you want to delete your masterpiece, you could take the selection tool, left mouse down and drag over everything. Let go. So now everything is selected, and hit delete.
I got it. And then delete.
Just the delete key on the keyboard. Yes, ma'am.
How would you get to the little regular mouse thing, because I can't get out of the
Brush.
yeah.
Okay, on the very top of the toolbar, it's the selection tool.
Oh, I see.
The little dark arrow with a white outline. There is another arrow underneath. Its function's a little different. Now, if you do use the brush tool, if you draw something that is a complete shape, so this should be a complete shape, which means that the end starts where the beginning is. It's complete. You can take this is the paint bucket tool, and I'm just going to use a different color. And it's still a fill color. And I click inside, it should fill. If yours does not fill, that means it's not a complete shape. Yes, ma'am.
Right now it's like selecting it, so it's changing the color of the.
Oh, click off of it.
Unselecting.
Very good question. If yours is selected and you're trying to change the color and it's doing things you don't want to do, just take the selection tool and click off. Anywhere on your canvas that's not on the shape itself. Okay, was everybody able to get the brush tool to work okay? Everybody's good? Okay, so with the brush tool, we're just going to create a little environment for our ball to bounce in. It's going to be something very simple. I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to use a brownish color. So what I'm going to do is create a basic, just a little ground plane. And I'm going to use a different. Okay. So I'm just going to make a ground. Doesn't have to be even. And outside of the canvas, I'm going to complete the shape. Now, even though when we draw outside of the canvas, we can still see our brush. Like I can still see this drawing out here. When we later turn this into a video, anything that's outside of this paper will no longer be seen. So kind of imagine it as if you're drawing on a piece of paper on your table, and you draw and your Sharpie goes over past your paper and marks on the table. Well, you can see it on the table and you can see it on your paper, but when you take your paper away, you won't see this drawing on your paper anymore. Only what you drew on your paper, nothing that got on your table. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Fabulous. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this with a solid color. So it's grass, sort of. And I'm going to make a sky.
Wait, how did you fill it all in?
Oh, I just took the paint bucket tool, and I had used the same color. So I didn't change my color under the fill color. Now the only thing is if you do that, if you fill in your shape with the same color as your outline, it combines. So it's all considered just one shape.
But how did you color it all like that?
Oh, all I did was I drew the shape, and then I grabbed the paint bucket tool, which is right underneath, and then I tapped inside.
Then how come that isn't working? Oh, never mind.
Oh, what was it doing? It may, if it doesn't fill, it may not be a complete shape.
Oh, okay. I see.
That's what I just noticed just now.
It may look like a complete shape. In fact, you could have it start and end right in the same spot, but if you're using a very thin brush, sometimes Flash will kind of not make the shape complete, and it can be annoying like that. Okay, so I'm just going to use a blue color. Any blue color will do. And I'm just going to draw an outline around the outside of the box. Basically, I'm just filling it in. I'm just filling in the stage. Here we go. And I'm just going to tap inside. There we go. Beautiful, it's my masterpiece. So, if you go to the bottom, you should have what's called a timeline. It's a little palette. It says layer 1. There's no other layers underneath because we haven't made any yet. And this is the length of our animation. And the only thing that we have right now is one little black dot. The little black dot inside is what's called a keyframe. And that just means it's a frame that has information. Our information is this background. So we've placed a key, without even realizing it, we've placed a keyframe of background information right in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on layer 1, and I'm going to name it BG for background.
What are you doing? I was still doing the thing.
Sure. Right now, we're on what yours should say layer 1, down here at the bottom, under the timeline. And all I did was I just double clicked on the word layer 1, and I just wrote it in BG for background, not the Bee Gees singing group. This is just so when we label our layers, like right now we just have one layer, so it's easy to know, okay, well this layer has this information on it because it's the only layer we have. But when you work on films like the ones that I showed you, you can end up with hundreds of layers. And goodness, trying to keep all that organized can get crazy. So it's always good to have good what we call naming habits or naming schemes right from the beginning. So it doesn't really matter what you name it. You could spell out the word background, you can name it BG, you can name it really anything so that you know what it is, so long as it's consistent. So I'm just naming it BG because it's short and it's short for background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer because anything that you want to animate should never be on the same layer as anything else. Anything that's being animated should always be by itself. So we're going to create a new layer, and we can do that by going to the bottom left. Is it? Yeah, right here. It looks like a little page turning. And when I left mouse click, I get layer 2. Now layer 2, notice that the layer looks a little different. We have a little circle, but it's empty. It's kind of grayed out. While at the bottom, underneath, we have a lighter gray, kind of looks like a key, like a piano key, with a black dot inside. This one means that there's information on it. This one means that we do have a keyframe, but it's technically empty. We don't have anything on it. It's like having a blank sheet of paper. So what we're going to do is first I'm going to rename this layer ball, because that's what we're going to be making.
What were you doing?
Oh, I'm just creating a new layer that we're going to be putting the ball on. So basically like a new sheet of paper. So we should have 2 layers, BG, and layer 2. I'm going to double click on layer 2 to name it, and I'm just going to name it ball, just to keep it easy. So instead of paintbrushing a ball, we can actually create a perfect circle in here using the oval tool. And I'm going to use a different color other than blue, otherwise we won't be able to really see it. So I'm going to make it dark blue. We'll make it dark blue. Now, when using a tool like the oval tool, this finally matters. When I create a circle, it's going to be dark blue with a black outline. I'm going to go inside. I'm going to left mouse down and drag. Do not let go. And hold down Shift on your keyboard. The reason why we're holding down Shift means that it's going to be scaling as a circle and not an oval. For a ball, it's going to be important that the ball starts off as a perfect circle. And we don't want it to be too big. If it's too large, we won't be able to really have much room for it to bounce. So make it about a little small ball. There we go. Yes, ma'am.
How do you change the color of it even though it's like already set as a ball?
Oh, all you do is take the selection tool. Now you can click on the outside and change the color of the outlining, what's called a stroke, by changing the color in here. Or, see how it's visible. Or you can click on the inside and change the fill color. So if we wanted to, let's say, make it red. Usually I get rid of the strokes. So I'm going to click on the outside and hit the delete key. But you can choose to keep it or not. It's just if you want your ball to have an outline around it. And I'll go back to a dark blue. Was everybody able to make a circle? And again, it should be as close to a perfect circle as you can. Want to avoid ovals right now.
The fill still isn't working for me.
Try clicking inside first.
Yeah, I tried clicking it.
Oh, it didn't work? Okay. Let me take a look.
I can't fill in the grass.
Okay.
I accidentally erased the grass that I made.
Okay.
I couldn't make a blue background.
Sure. We'll make a new one. So what we're going to do is go to, make sure that your ball is selected. Now, if your ball has a stroke, click on the key to make sure that everything's selected because you want the fill color and you want the stroke around it selected as well. If it has one. Remember, I deleted mine. I'm going to go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. I'm going to leave it up for a moment so you guys can select it too. Just make sure your ball is selected and then Modify, Convert to Symbol. Now a little dialog box is going to appear. And for the name, we're just going to call it ball. Very creative, I know. Registration only matters if we're programming. And we're not going to be programming today. So it doesn't matter which one of these little boxes we have selected. Won't make any difference. For type, we have movie clip, button, and graphic. Button is literally if we want something to behave like a button. Kind of like a website, if you roll your mouse over and it reacts or lights up or anything like that. Movie clip is if we're putting animations inside of animations in an interactive project, and we're not going to be doing that. So we only really need graphic. So I'm going to hit OK. There we go. Now notice when I select the background, it gets kind of fuzzy looking. But if I select the ball now, it no longer gets fuzzy looking. Instead, it gets a little blue box. Now that box should not surround anything else. And when you move it, the ball should move by itself, like none of the background should come with it. Also, the box should be the size of the ball. Like if it's bigger, like if there's a lot of space around the ball, that means that there's some kind of funk that it's also being selected. Yes, ma'am?
There's like this outline that stays behind.
Oh.
Like,
What you might have to do, Dave, is double click inside and see if there's maybe an artifact floating around the ball.
Oh, there's another circle.
Oh, there's 2 circles.
Yeah, there's one hiding in the corner.
Yay. When that happens, you can actually just go inside. That's probably what he's going to be doing. Double click inside, and you can make adjustments. If there's another object, or if we want to change the color. Say I want to make it not as dark a blue.
how do you move it around? Because it's not working.
You can grab the selection tool and just grab it, and you can just move it around. Okay, is everybody ready to start bouncing their ball? Fabulous. Okay, so we have, again, one layer that's the ball and one layer that's the background. Right now, the length of our animation is one whole frame, which is 1/24 of a second. Fun. We'll need to be a little longer than that in order to get the ball to do anything fun. So down here, what we're going to do is we're going to extend these 2 frames to last, well, we'll just take it to the end, 115 frames for now. So what we're going to do is left mouse click inside one of these frames, and we're just going to take it to one of them. Left mouse click, insert frame. Now notice for me, it may look different for you. For me, everything disappeared but the ball. The reason why is because I only extended the length of the ball layer. That just means that the background layer only lasts for 1 frame, 1/24 of a second, and the ball itself lasts a mighty about almost 5 seconds. So I'm just going to click underneath, right mouse click, insert frame. Now there's no animation yet. If I hit enter, it plays through, very dynamic. So nothing's moving yet. All we did was extend the length of the frames. We didn't actually add any animation yet. So you'll know you did it right if on the timeline, if your timeline is now sort of a light gray up to near the right end, and then it gets dark again. This area is our, kind of like our live frames. Again, nothing's moving yet, but we're going to make it move soon. What we're going to do is go about 10 frames in. And I'm going to take the background layer and I'm going to click on this little black dot, which is underneath a lock. And what that does is it makes me unable to make any changes to it. I'm trying to grab it with the selection tool, but nothing's happening. That's because I'm going to be moving the ball. I'm not going to be moving the background at all. Okay, so I'm going to go to the ball layer, underneath 10, right mouse click, insert keyframe. So it looks like nothing's happened at all, which is true because we haven't really changed anything yet. What happens is when you insert a keyframe, it creates a keyframe of whatever information you have already there, which is basically this ball just sitting here. So we have 2 keys, one on the first frame, one on this 10th frame, of the same information. I'm going to go to the 10th frame. I'm going to take this ball and I'm just going to move it down, not straight down, sort of diagonal-ish. Now when I let go of the left mouse button, that little essence of ball at the top left corner is going to disappear. Now if I scrub back and forth with my timeline indicator, now there's different information. So does everybody have 2 keyframes so far? Okay. So the first one is of the ball high in the air. The second one is the ball hitting the ground. If I go in between, anywhere in between these 2 keyframes, left mouse click, create classic tween. Flash is literally going to animate it for us, literally from point A to point B. So it's very straight on. Now if I scrub, if I hit enter on the keyboard, okay. So is everybody's ball moving predictably?
Yeah.
Is anybody's ball moving like in a weird direction and it's snapping to another position? Nobody's doing that? Okay, that's good. That means everybody's symbols are working properly. That's a good sign. Okay, so right now we do have the ball moving from the top to the bottom. It's nice. It's a bit too straight. Usually in animation we like to move things in arcs. So if the ball is bouncing, we're going to need it to fall in more of an arc and not as much of a straight diagonal line. If we're doing straight lines, it usually means power. It would imply that the ball was hit by something, a baseball bat, hit a ceiling, maybe bounced into something and was knocked down. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to create another keyframe and put the ball into more of an arc. Now, after we do this, I'm going to show you a simpler way that we can tell the ball to follow a path. We're going to do it a different way soon. But for now, so we're going to go about let's do about 2 frames in. So we're now on frame 3. Right mouse click, insert keyframe. So again, nothing's changed because it's just making a keyframe based on the information that the ball had on that frame. So the ball's in the same position, but now the only reason why we made a keyframe is that now I can move it. In order to make that arc, I'm going to move the ball up a little bit. And I'm going to move it to the right a little bit. And I can nudge it with my arrows. So a little better. Nudge it. Now, if we find it hard to see where the ball was, like where the balls before and the balls after are, we can turn on what's called onion skinning, and it allows us to see the frames before and or the frames after. Underneath here, near the bottom, does it show it? Yeah, right here. It's called onion skin. Onion skin, it just means that you can see the frames before or after the frame that you're on. And that will make it easier if I'm nudging the position of my ball, so I can see where it started from and where it's going.
In traditional animation, you would have actual pages
Mm-hmm.
to be able to see.
That's absolutely right. We would have it on what's called a light box or a light table, so that when the light shines underneath the paper, you can see the frames before and the frames after. So this is actually emulating a traditional animation tactic. Okay. So now it moves a little bit more in an arc. We can even go in here. I'm going to bring this in a little more. I'm going to create another keyframe. Yes, ma'am.
Each time I like move the red thing, it moves the
All the little.
little circles. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Because what it's doing is whenever you move your ball, it's changing your animation a little bit. It's updating. Because Flash is doing a lot of the in-betweens for you. Or in-betweens are the little drawings that are between your keys. So when I adjust this position, these two aren't going to change because these are two keys. But this one, if I adjust this one, the one underneath is going to change. There we go. Okay, so we have our ball hitting the bottom now. So now what we're going to do is create another key somewhere later. We'll go to frame 20. We're probably going to have to adjust our timing. I'm going to go to frame 20, left mouse click, insert keyframe. And now I'm going to take this ball and I'm going to move it up. Now I'm not going to move it up as high as it bounced the first time. Does anybody know why? Yes, ma'am.
Because it's losing momentum.
I'm sorry?
It's losing its momentum.
You're right. That's absolutely right. So every time the ball bounces, unless you slammed it, if it's just going by gravity, it's going to bounce less and less and less each time because it's running out of inertia. Very, very good. So I'm just going to check. Yeah, it's definitely lower than it was. There we go. Now notice it just teleports. And that's just because we need to add the in-between. We need to add the tweens. So we just right mouse click, create classic tween. And we're going to enter. There we go. Did everybody get their ball up to a second bounce, at the top of a second bounce? Everybody's good? Okay, fabulous. We are going to go back and add more of an arc, but we'll do that soon. I'm going to go let's try around frame 27. Insert a new keyframe. Insert just plain keyframe. And we're going to take it back to the ground plane. And I'm going to extend my onion skin because I want to make sure the ball's at the same level as it was on the first drop, which it's not. There we go.
How do you delete an onion skin?
Oh, a keyframe you don't want?
No, the onion skin.
Oh, you can just click on it to get rid of it. It's right under here. And if you don't want to look at it, like sometimes, especially if you're animating a character that's maybe sitting in place, it can get annoying to look at because you'll see so many frames on top of each other that you can't really tell what's going on anymore. Yes, ma'am?
How do you fix it to not make it teleport again?
To that what?
How do you fix it to not make it teleport, like?
Oh, all you have to do is just right mouse click inside, in between the two keyframes, doesn't matter where. Anywhere inside's fine, right mouse click, create classic tween.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And all it does is it's telling Flash, this object starting here, it's ending here, you animate it for me. And Flash's like, okay, and it animates for you. But Flash isn't really the smartest program to do this with. So what it does is it goes from point A to point B as easily as it can, which means that everything's going to be straight lines and diagonals. We have to tell it to go in curves and add arcs, and we basically have to give it more information. There we go. So if you want to adjust your timing, basically move your keyframes closer or farther apart. Now, closer makes your animation quicker. Farther apart, like if I move this key, if I tap on it, left mouse down and drag it far away, what's going to happen is it's going to bounce, and then when it goes down its second time, it's going to go really slow. Really slow. If I want to go really quick, I would take the keyframe and move it close. So now it's going to bounce, and then it's going to slam quick. One way to think about it, I usually tell my kids at the university this, is try to imagine that the two keyframes are two different classes that you go to. Let's say it's your math class and your English class. And they're one's right after the other. Now let's say your math class is right in the next room. Very, very close. And you have 10 minutes to go to it. You're just going to walk. It's not going to be that far of a distance. You have plenty of time. You maybe drink a drink, or maybe work on your homework while you're walking to class, read a book. Or let's say your class is a mile away, very far away. College students, that can happen. High school, not usually, hopefully not. And you have 5 minutes to get to class. As soon as the bell rings, you're probably going to be throwing your backpack on and running full speed, maybe jumping on the back of a car and holding on, and hoping that you get to class on time. So the closer your keyframes are, the less time you have. The farther apart your keyframes are, the more time you have to get from point A to point B. So if I play it, there we go. So we just need to add an arc. Now it's okay that it moves in diagonals here because it's hitting something, it's hitting the ground. So it's not really, when you have something hit the ground, it's not really going to hit and slide and then come up. So it's hitting something. So the ball hitting the ground and then bouncing up is not a big deal. That's fine. But when it goes up here, we are going to need to give it an arc. So what I'm going to do is go over here, and I'm going to add a keyframe. I'm going to give it an onion skin so I can see. And I'm just going to nudge the ball. There we go. Maybe nudge this over. Okay, and then I'm going to go inside here and also just nudge it a little bit, insert a keyframe. And it's just to help it have a little bit more of an arc when it reaches the top. We're also going to want to do it on the other side. And I don't really need the onion skin to go that far. Here we go. Insert keyframe. And we're just going to nudge it over. I'm just going to nudge this one over a little more, slow it
How
down.
did you just animate that to make it move by itself?
Oh, I'm hitting Enter key on the keyboard.
Oh.
And it's just playing through the animation. When we scrub it, scrubbing is when you left mouse down on the timeline indicator here. And I'm going to get rid of the onion skin. That's just us kind of scrubbing through it slowly. But if you hit Enter on the keyboard, you can see it at full speed. Is your ball moving? Is everybody's ball moving predictably?
No.
No?
It's just going straight, like, it's going faster than normal.
Uh-oh. That just means you might need to move the keyframes farther apart.
Okay.
They may be just a little too close together. Depending on how close or how far apart how wide your ball's bounces are, you may need more keys or less keys than what I'm doing in the in the demo. My ball's not going all that far.
Oh, it could move it too.
Okay, yes ma'am.
How do you move a keyframe?
Oh, all you have to do is if you want to move, let's say I want to take this key and I want to pull it away, add more space. Just left mouse tap it, so now it's selected. Then left mouse down on it and pull. Or push it. If you want to do it to multiple keys, click on the first key that you want to change, hold down shift, click on the last key you want to change, so now they're all selected, and then left mouse down and drag, and you'll drag the whole group. Some crazy timing I got here. This one looks like someone came up and... So let me take these and shift them over a little. And let's shift these over. Okay. So was everybody able to get their balls to bounce predictably? Like even if it's a little fast or a little slow or the speed changes, is the ball moving where you expect it to move? Well, we've seen that happen, huh, David?
A couple times the ball goes flat.
It's like, okay, here's point A, here's point B, and the ball just flies some other
I
direction.
remember putting point B in there. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, wait, hold on, where's this extra route this ball is going? Okay, so wouldn't it be easier if we could just tell the ball, okay, I'm going to draw this line and you just follow it. Just follow this bouncing line. Guess what? We actually can do that. Cool. So we're going to do that now. So this way is okay, but it does get a little chunky and we have to eyeball it. But we actually can draw a line and say, okay, ball, this is what I want you to do. Follow this path. And so that's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is I'm going to take this ball and I'm going to copy and paste it onto a new layer and make this one just go away for a little bit. So I'm going to take this first layer. I'm going to go to Edit, Copy. Now I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to call it Ball W Guide. Or you can call it Ball W or Ball G for Ball Guided. Anything you want.
How did you do that? Can you explain it again?
Sure. Making the new layer?
Yeah.
Sure. Just go down here. It is right over here. And then the new layer will appear above the other two. And then I just double clicked inside and I named it Ball W Guide for Ball with Guide. But you can call it Ball 2, Ball Guided, Ball anything. Ball 2.0. And I'm just going to go to Edit, Paste and Place. And I'm going to poke the eyeball underneath the ball by itself. So now if I move back and forth, the ball is no longer moving. The reason why is because the ball layer that has the animation in it is now invisible. So we don't see it anymore.
What do you click?
So all I did was on the ball layer, I clicked on the black circle below the eyeball. And that just made the ball layer go away, this one. And I copied the first layer of that ball, that first frame, just to put it back in the same position. So now if I scrub back and forth, there's no movement, which is fine because we're gonna start over in an easier way. And I'm going to create one more new layer, and I'm going to call this one Guide.
What did she do? Mine didn't copy the ball.
I'm sorry, yours didn't copy the ball? That's okay. What you can do is go to the first frame, and this is just so we don't have to make a new ball. If you want to make a new ball, you can make a whole new one with a different color. But I'm just copying and pasting the ball that I have. What you can do is just right mouse click inside, and you can copy the frame, and you can go in here and paste the frame. That'll do the same thing, except that it does take the tween with it, and I'm just going to remove the tween for now.
My ball is still moving.
Okay, just poke the little eyeball underneath right next to the eyeball, the dot underneath the eyeball on the layer that has your animation on it.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing what's called a guide. And the guide is going to tell the ball's basically going to follow it. So nobody here has ever used Photoshop or Illustrator or any of the digital arts.
I used it, but I forgot.
I've
Okay.
seen my friend use Photoshop before.
Okay, so no one's familiar with the pen tool, right? I don't think? Okay, then I'm going to use the pencil tool because that's easier for new people. Okay, so we're going to use the pencil tool for this. The color of anything we draw with the pencil tool is going to be this color, which helps me. They look the same, so that'll be easier to remember. And I'm just going to make it black, but really you just make it any color that is easy for you to see on the background that you created. So if you have a dark background, you might want to make it white. You can make it red. Actually, I might make mine red. Ultimately, it will not be seen in the final animation, so you don't have to worry about what it looks like so long as you can see it.
Do we have to add another one called guide?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we're going to have a new layer that's going to be by itself called guide. We haven't drawn anything on it yet. But we're going to be drawing with the pencil tool. It's important that it's the pencil tool because the brush tool, it won't work right. It won't read correctly. Okay, so with the pencil tool, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best with the mouse to draw, or the trackpad in my case, to draw basically the path that we would want the ball to go as closely as we can. So I'm going to left mouse down and I'm going to drag. Then I'm going to bounce. And I'm going to bounce it again. It's not the best drawing I've ever done.
How did you do that?
All I did was, I just undid it. Just grab the pencil tool. Try to use a color, this is going to be where your color is. And just try to use a color that's easy for you to see on the background that you have drawn. So if your background's, let's say, a night sky, it's dark, you may want to use a bright color. I'm going to use red because red's going to stand out a lot against blue. Again, you don't have to worry about what it will look like in the end because in the end the guide's going to be invisible. This is just so we can see it when we're putting the ball to it. So I'm just going to go start at the ball and I'm going to left mouse down and drag. And I'm going to do my best with a mouse to draw a path. So basically we're just going to tell the ball to follow this guide. But first we have to turn the guide into a guide. Like right now it's just, we named it guide, but Flash just sees it as a drawing. So what we're going to do is left mouse, click, guide. And it turns into what looks like a little, looks like a pickaxe. It otherwise doesn't look any different, just the symbol's changed.
Do you need to click in a specific area?
Just click on the name guide, left mouse click on it, and click on guide. Mine has a check mark next to it because mine's been turned into a guide layer.
Okay.
Okie dokie. Also, we hadn't done this when we were doing it the first time, so let's do it now. If we have time, we're going to try to add squash and stretch to the ball. And if we want to squash it and stretch it better, it'd be best if when it squashes towards the bottom of the ball and not the top. So just for now, using this tool, this is the free transform tool. This little circle in the center is called your anchor point. Your anchor point is basically whenever you change the ball or change any object, rotate, shrink, it's going to do it towards this section. What we're going to want to do is move it to the bottom so that when the ball squishes against the ground, it'll stay flat on the ground and it'll just squish in. Kind of like if you have the ball on the ground and you're stepping on it. If we have time, we're going to try to get into a little tiny bit of squash and stretch. So now, if I move my ball and I bring it close to this guide drawing, it should snap to it a little bit. Try to put it where it begins, and it may snap automatically. And then I'm going to go to the ball with guide layer, and I'm going to go somewhere later into it. Let's try 100. Right mouse click, insert keyframe.
Where do you click the right mouse?
Somewhere later on your timeline. I'm going to go to layer 100. I'm not sure yet how much time I'm going to need for this. I'll know by how quickly it goes.
Okay,
So
and then what do you click after you click the right mouse button?
insert keyframe.
Okay.
So right now it's just two keyframes with the same information. But on this newly made keyframe, we're going to move the ball to the end of the guide. And if everything goes well, hopefully, you just click inside. Anywhere inside, hit Create Classic Tween. If this was done correctly, it should follow the path. If it does not, if it was not made correctly, it's literally just going to float from our first position to our last position. Let's see. Right now, it's floating from our first position to our last position. That means it's not on the guide properly. I think we have to, that's right. Sorry, I missed a step. We have to connect them. Once you've started your animation, at this point, left mouse down on your ball, move it up towards your guide, and you're going to get a little black bar that appears in between the guide and the ball. And when I let go, it should connect the ball to the guide, and now they should float. Now it should be following the path. And I put way too much time. So I'll need to move the keys closer.
Why is my ball moving?
Your ball's not moving at all?
How do you make the connection?
Oh, you just left mouse down on the layer you want to do it to, pull it up just a little, and a little black line, like a thick black line, should appear between those two layers, and then you just let go, and the pickaxe will turn into sort of a dotted line.
I can see the black line, but it's not connected. Oh, there we go.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
All right. The last thing I'll show you is when your ball makes impact, usually you want something to show that it's hit something. And we do what's called squash and stretch. So basically we're going to take the ball and we're going to squash it a little bit so that it will look as if it's hitting a surface. So we're not going to have enough time to make it really do anything fabulous, but we'll just add one squash the first time it makes an impact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my timeline indicator and scrub it to when it hits the ground. So it's right about here. And I'm going to insert a keyframe. And I'm also going to take this, once I've inserted a keyframe. Now, if I squash it now, you may notice something, and I'm going to do it dramatically because I'm going to show you something weird that's going to happen. Notice how it's squashing as it goes down. We don't really want that. That's not so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo what I did. So what I'm going to do is, before I squash it, I've made a keyframe, but before I squash it, I'm going to create a keyframe before and a keyframe after.
Could you start over?
Sure. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. Very good. So I've made 3 keys. They're not doing anything yet. One is right before it makes impact, one's when it makes impact, and one's when it's coming back up again. So I'm going to go to the one in the middle, the one where it's impacting, and I'm going to squash it down, and I'm going to stretch it out. Because one thing we want to maintain is its mass. So however much it squashes, we're going to want to stretch it the same amount. And the reason why we have a keyframe before and a keyframe after is so that the change is sudden. Because the ball's not going to be squashing as it's falling. It squashes when it makes impact. So now if I hit return, the ball should squash when it makes its first impact. And you can do that for every time it hits. So I'm going to show it again. So this first bounce shows more impact because the ball has changed. The shape of the ball has changed.